44 of our 365-day Bible read. Today we will be reading Leviticus chapter 15, 16, and 17. And then we'll go on over to the New Testament to Matthew chapter 27, and we'll read verse 1 through 31. And we're also going to do the Bible studies for Leviticus chapter 15, 16, and 17 of what we read in the Bible. And then Matthew 27, verse 1 through 31, we're not going to do the Bible study for that half of Matthew 27. We'll wait until tomorrow once we finish up Matthew 27 by reading verse 32 through 66. That'll finish the entire Matthew 27. And then after tomorrow we have one more day of the book of Matthew. We have one more chapter after tomorrow. We'll have one more chapter left of the book of Matthew, so then we'll be starting the book of Mark. So that's very exciting. So yeah, okay, I am going to get started. Leviticus chapter 15, and happy Sunday. All right. Laws about bodily discharges. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when any man has a discharge from his body, his discharge is unclean. And this is the law of his uncleanness for a discharge. Whether his body runs with his discharge or his body is blocked up by his discharge, it is his uncleanness. Every bed on which the one with the discharge lies shall be unclean, and everything on which he sits shall be unclean. And anyone who touches his bed shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. And whoever sits on anything on which the one with the discharge has sat shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. And whoever touches the body of the one with the discharge shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. And if the one with the discharge spits on someone who is clean, then he shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. And any saddle on which the one with the discharge rides shall be unclean. And whoever touches anything that was under him shall be unclean until the evening. And whoever carries such things shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. Anyone whom the one with the discharge touches without having rinsed his hands in water shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. And an earthenware vessel that the one with the discharge touches shall be broken, and every vessel of wood shall be rinsed in water. And when the one with a discharge is cleansed of his discharge, then he shall count for himself 7 days for his cleansing, and wash his clothes. And he shall bathe his body in fresh water, and shall be clean. And on the 8th day he shall take 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons and come before the Lord to the entrance of the tent of meeting and give them to the priest. And the priest shall use them, one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. And the priest shall make atonement for him before the Lord for his discharge. If a man has an emission of semen, he shall bathe his whole body in water and be unclean until the evening. And every garment and every skin on which the semen comes shall be washed with water and be unclean until the evening. If a man lies with a woman and has an emission of semen, both of them shall bathe themselves in water and be unclean until the evening. When a woman has a discharge, and the discharge in her body is blood, she shall be in her menstrual impurity for 7 days. And whoever touches her shall be unclean until the evening. And everything on which she lies during her menstrual impurity shall be unclean. Everything also on which she sits shall be unclean. And whoever touches her bed shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. And whoever touches anything on which she sits shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. Whether it is the bed or anything on which she sits, when he touches it, he shall be unclean until the evening. And if any man lies with her and her menstrual impurity comes upon him, he shall be unclean 7 days, and every bed on which he lies shall be unclean. If a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, not at the time of her menstrual impurity, or if she has a discharge beyond the time of her impurity, all the days of the discharge she shall continue in uncleanness, as in the days of her impurity. She shall be unclean. Every bed on which she lies all the days of her discharge shall be to her as the bed of her impurity. And everything on which she sits shall be unclean, as in the uncleanness of her menstrual impurity. And whoever touches these things shall be unclean, and shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. But if she is cleansed of her discharge, she shall count for herself 7 days, and after that she shall be clean. And on the 8th day she shall take 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, and bring them to the priest, to the entrance of the tent of meeting. And the priest shall use one for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering. And the priest shall make atonement for her before the Lord for her unclean discharge. Thus you shall keep the people of Israel separate from their uncleanness, lest they die in their uncleanness by defiling my tabernacle that is in their midst. This is the law for him who has a discharge, and for him who has an emission of semen, becoming unclean thereby. Also for her who is unwell with her menstrual impurity, that is for anyone, male or female, who has a discharge, and for the man who lies with a woman who is unclean. Leviticus chapter 16, the Day of Atonement. The Lord spoke to Moses after the death of the 2 sons of Aaron, when they drew near before the Lord and died. And the Lord said to Moses, "Tell Aaron your brother not to come at any time into the holy place inside the veil, before the mercy seat that is on the ark, so that he may not die. For I will appear in the cloud over the mercy seat. But in this way Aaron shall come into the holy place with a bull from the herd for a sin offering, and a ram for a burnt offering. He shall put on the holy linen coat, and shall have the linen undergarment on his body, and he shall tie the linen sash around his waist, and wear the linen turban. These are the holy garments. He shall bathe his body in water and then put them on. And he shall take from the congregation of the people of Israel 2 male goats for a sin offering, and 1 ram for a burnt offering. And Aaron shall offer the bull as a sin offering for himself, and shall make atonement for himself and for his house. Then he shall take the 2 goats and set them before the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And Aaron shall cast lots over the 2 goats, one lot for the Lord and the other lot for Azazel. And Aaron shall present the goat on which the lot fell for the Lord, and use it as a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell for Azazel shall be presented alive before the Lord to make atonement over it, that it may be sent away into the wilderness of Azazel. Aaron shall present the bull as a sin offering for himself, and shall make atonement for himself and for his house. He shall kill the bull as a sin offering for himself, and he shall take a censer full of coals and of fire from the altar before the Lord, and 2 handfuls of sweet incense beaten small, and he shall bring it inside the veil, and put the incense on the fire before the Lord, that the cloud of the incense may cover the mercy seat that is over the testimony, so that he does not die. And he shall take some of the blood of the bull and sprinkle it with his finger on the front of the mercy seat on the east side, and in front of the mercy seat he shall sprinkle some of the blood with his finger 7 times. Then he shall kill the goat of the sin offering that is for the people, and bring its blood inside the veil, and do with its blood as he did with the blood of the bull, sprinkling it over the mercy seat and in front of the mercy seat. Thus he shall make atonement for the holy place because of the uncleanness of the people of Israel, and because of their transgressions, all their sins. And so he shall do for the tent of meeting, which dwells with them in the midst of their uncleanness. So no one may be in the tent of meeting from the time he enters to make atonement in the holy place, until he comes out and has made atonement for himself and for his house and for all the assembly of Israel. Then he shall go out to the altar that is before the Lord, and make atonement for it, and shall take some of the blood of the bull and some of the blood of the goat, and put it on the horns of the altar all around. And he shall sprinkle some of the blood on it with his finger 7 times, and cleanse it and consecrate it from the uncleanness of the people of Israel. And when he has made an end of atoning for the holy place, and the tent of meeting, and the altar, he shall present the live goat. And Aaron shall lay both his hands on the head of the live goat, and confess over it all the inequities of the people of Israel, and all their transgressions, all their sins. And he shall put them on the head of the goat, and send it away into the wilderness by the hand of a man who is in readiness. The goat shall bear all their inequities on itself to a remote area, and he shall let the goat go free in the wilderness. Then Aaron shall come into the tent of meeting, and shall take off the linen garments that he put on when he went into the holy place, and shall leave them there. And he shall bathe his body in water in a holy place, and put on his garments, and come out and offer his burnt offering and the burnt offering of the people, and make atonement for himself and for the people. And the fat of the sin offering he shall burn on the altar. And he who lets the goat go to Azazel shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and afterward he may come into the camp. And the bull for the sin offering and the goat for the sin offering, whose blood was brought in to make atonement in the holy place, shall be carried outside the camp. Their skin and their flesh and their dung shall be burned up with fire. And he who burns them shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and afterward he may come into the camp. And it shall be a statute to you forever, that in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, you shall afflict yourselves and shall do no work, either the native or the stranger who sojourns among you. For on this day shall atonement be made for you to cleanse you. You shall be clean before the Lord from all your sins. It is a Sabbath of solemn rest to you, and you shall afflict yourselves. It is a statute forever. And the priest who is anointed and consecrated as priest in his father's place shall make atonement, wearing the holy linen garments. He shall make atonement for the holy sanctuary, and he shall make atonement for the tent of meeting and for the altar. And he shall make atonement for the priests and for all the people of the assembly. And this shall be a statute forever for you, that atonement may be made for the people of Israel once in the year because of all their sins. And Aaron did as the Lord commanded Moses. Leviticus chapter 17. The place of sacrifice. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and his sons and to all the people of Israel, and say to them, This is the thing that the Lord has commanded. If any one of the house of Israel, kills an ox or a lamb or a goat in the camp, or kills it outside the camp, and does not bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting to offer it as a gift to the Lord in front of the tabernacle of the Lord, blood guilt shall be imputed to that man. He has shed blood, and that man shall be cut off from among his people. This is to the end that the people of Israel may bring their sacrifices that they sacrifice in the open field, that they may bring them to the Lord, to the priest, at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and sacrifice them as sacrifices of peace offerings to the Lord. And the priest shall throw the blood on the altar of the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and burn the fat for a pleasing aroma to the Lord. So they shall no more sacrifice their sacrifices to goat demons, after whom they whore. This shall be a statute forever for them throughout their generations. And you shall say to them, any one of the house of Israel, or the strangers who sojourn among them, who offers a burnt offering or sacrifice, and does not bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting to offer it to the Lord, that man shall be cut off from his people. Laws against eating blood. If any one of the house of Israel or of the strangers who sojourn among them eats any blood, I will set my face against that person who eats blood, and will cut him off from among his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it for you on the altar to make atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that makes atonement by the life. Therefore, I have said to the people of Israel, no person among you shall eat blood, neither shall any stranger who sojourns among you eat blood. Anyone also of the people of Israel or of the strangers who sojourn among them, who takes in hunting any beast or bird that may be eaten, shall pour out its blood and cover it with earth. For the life of every creature is its blood. Its blood is its life. Therefore, I have said to the people of Israel, You shall not eat the blood of any creature, for the life of every creature is in its blood. Whoever eats it shall be cut off, and every person who eats and every person who eats what dies of itself, or what is torn by beasts, whether he is a native or a sojourner, shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. Then he shall be clean. But if he does not wash them or bathe his flesh, he shall bear his iniquity. All right, so that was Leviticus chapters 15, 16, and 17. And we're now going to do the Bible study for Leviticus chapter 15, 16, and 17. All right. Leviticus chapter 15. For people who had, Leviticus chapter 15 Bible study. For people who had a discharge, how long would they be unclean? They would be unclean until the discharge was finished. What would they have to do to be ceremonially clean? After the discharge had stopped, they would wait for 7 days and then wash themselves and their clothes. On the 8th day, they would bring a burnt offering and a sin offering to the priest. What was the law for the emission of semen? If there is an emission of semen by the man or a man with a woman, they must bathe themselves and wash any garment that may have semen. They will be unclean until evening. How long is the purification period for a woman after her monthly impurity? A woman would be unclean for 7 days during her monthly impurity. Could a man touch a woman who was in her monthly impurity? If a man could not restrain himself, then he too would be unclean for 7 days and must separate himself from others. What was required after a woman was cleansed of her discharge? Once a woman's discharge was done, she would count an additional 7 days and she would be clean. On the 8th day, she would go to the priest and offer a sin offering as a burnt offering. That was the Bible study for Leviticus chapter 15, and we're now going to do the Bible study for Leviticus chapter 16. Leviticus chapter 16 Bible study. It's only like 3 questions. What was the Day of Atonement for the people of Israel? The Day of Atonement was a ceremonial atonement for the priest, the most holy place, the altar, and the sins of the whole congregation, whatever they might be. How often was this done? The Day of Atonement is done once a year on the 10th day of the 7th month. What was the major difference between this offering and other offerings? The blood of the sacrifice was taken behind the veil and sprinkled on mercy seat. No other sacrifices were sprinkled on the mercy seat. Who do the 2 goats represent? Who do the 2 goats represent? The sacrifice goat represents Jesus and atonement for sins. The scapegoat represents Israel and us, the sinners, set free under grace. All right, so that was Leviticus chapter 16 Bible study, and we're now going to do the Bible study for Leviticus chapter 17, which is only 2 questions. Leviticus chapter 17 Bible study. What were the people of Israel never to eat? The people were never to eat the blood of any animal. Why? The blood is its life and is used to make atonement for the sins of the people. All right, so that was the Bible studies for what we read today of the Old Testament, which was Leviticus chapter 15, 16, and 17. And we're now going to go over to the New Testament and read Matthew chapter 27, verse 1 through 30. No, verse 1 through 31 only today. And we're not going to do the Bible study for it until tomorrow when we finish it. We'll finish Matthew 27 tomorrow by reading verse 32 through 66, and then we'll do the Bible study for the entire chapter. And after tomorrow, we only have one more day of reading the book of Matthew. We have one chapter left, and then we'll be starting the book of Mark the following day. So that is very exciting. We're starting our second book of the New Testament in like 2 days or something like that. So that's really exciting. So yes, in 3 days actually. And yes, and remember I'm following the year reading schedule from esv.org, and they split up the chapters of books of the New Testament this way, just because there's more books of the Bible in the Old Testament. So they split up the New Testament, so we're not finishing the New Testament before we finish the Old Testament. That way we can read some of the New Testament and the Old Testament each day. So that's why it's like that. So yeah, that's why I'm splitting it up. I'm just following their schedule. So anyways, okay, let's get started. Matthew chapter 27. I think I'm reading verse 1 through 31. Yep, Matthew 27, verse 1 through 31. Okay. Matthew chapter 27. Jesus delivered to Pilate. When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. And they bound him and led him away and delivered him over to Pilate the governor. Judas hangs himself. Then when Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he changed his mind and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders, saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. They said, what is that to us? See to it yourself. And throwing down the pieces of silver into the temple, he departed and he went and hanged himself. For the chief priests, taking the pieces of silver, said, it is not lawful to put them into the treasury, since it is blood money. So they took counsel and bought with them the potter's field as a burial place for strangers. Therefore, that field has been called the field of blood to this day. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken by the prophet Jeremiah, saying, and they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him on whom a price had been set by some of the sons of Israel, and they gave them for the potter's field as the Lord directed me. Jesus before Pilate. Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, are you the king of the Jews? Jesus said, you have said so. But when he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate said to him, do you not hear how many things they testify against you? But he gave him no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed. The crowd chooses Barabbas. The crowd chooses Barabbas. Now, at the feast, the governor was accustomed to release for the crowd any one prisoner whom they wanted. And they had been a notorious, and there had been, I'm sorry, and they had then a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. So when they had gathered, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release for you? Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ?" For he knew that it was out of envy that they had delivered him up. Besides, while he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, "Have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much because of him today in a dream." Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. The governor again said to them, "Which of the two do you want me to release for you?" And they said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "Then what shall I do with Jesus, who is called Christ?" They all said, "Let him be crucified." And he said, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Let him be crucified." Pilate delivers Jesus to be crucified. So when Pilate saw that he was gaining nothing, but rather that So when Pilate saw that he was gaining nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, he took water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, "I am innocent of this man's blood. See it to yourselves." And all the people answered, "His blood be on us and on our children." Then he released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, delivered him to be crucified. Jesus is mocked. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and they gathered the whole battalion before him. And they stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and twisting together a crown of thorns, they put it on his head and put a reed in his right hand. And kneeling before him, they mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they spit on him and took the reed and struck him on the head. And when they had mocked him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes on him and led him away to crucify him. Terrible. Okay, so that was Matthew chapter 27, verse 1 through 31. We're not going to do the Bible study for Matthew 27, verse 1 through 31. We're going to wait until we finish Matthew 27 tomorrow by reading verse 32 through 66 tomorrow, and we'll do the Bible study for the entire Matthew chapter 27. So yes, and after tomorrow, we have one more day of the book of Matthew, and then we'll be starting the book of Mark. So that's so exciting. We'll be starting our second book of the New Testament. So just a recap of what we did today. From the Old Testament, we read Leviticus chapter 15, 16, and 17. And then we did the Bible study for Leviticus chapter 15, 16, and 17. And then we went on over to the New Testament, to the first book of the New Testament, to Matthew, which we're almost done with. And we read Matthew chapter 27, verse 1 through 31. And we'll finish that up tomorrow by reading verse 32 through 66. And we'll do the Bible study for the entire Matthew chapter 27. So yes, we are going to be starting our second book of the New Testament. So I'm really excited about that. So we're just knocking these books of this Bible out. We are on day 44, and these days are just flying by. I can't believe it's been 44 days already. So yes, I'm excited for us on this journey. I know we are going to see so much growth in different areas of our life, and I'm excited for us. And I already see a change within myself in different areas of my life. So I'm sure for anyone who has been following this journey for the past, who is on this journey, who's been on it these past 44 days, I know for a fact that you see change in your life as well. So it's impossible to open the Bible for 44 days and have no change in your life. Like, no one can tell me they have no change in their life unless, I don't know. So, anyways, yeah, so anyways, I love you guys. God loves you. You're worthy, you're valuable, you're beautiful, you are enough, you matter. And I will see you guys tomorrow for day I'll see you guys tomorrow for day 45. I love you guys. Happy Sunday, and go enjoy the rest of your day and be blessed. Do, do, do.